Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Initial MSP Sales Podcast. I'm joined today by my co-hosts Rob Rogers and Allison Trisco.
Hey, Tim.
I'm sure some of you remember us from the MSP Business School podcast that we did with Brian Doyle for a number of years. We have decided to start up a podcast specifically on sales and marketing processes and topics. So I just want to start off. Welcome. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Timmy.
Living the dream.
Are you?
Living the dream.
That's great.
I'm not living the dream.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe after this topic today,
Yes.
you'll feel better.
Yeah. Sure. We'll go with that.
Okay.
Look, first, we've got a number of topics that we're going to cover over the coming months and years, hopefully. Where we wanted to start out was we've had an uptick in our clients, specifically trying to get deal registrations in time and beat out their competition. And, although this isn't personally something I've had a huge amount of experience with, Allison Trisco specifically has, and Rob has too, even going back to when we were in the MSP industry 10 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll kick it off. I'll kick it over to Allison first because you've got the most experience on this. Can you share the importance of deal registration, why you need to get in early and often, and what the advantages are, and then we can kind of go from there.
And what is it, Trisco?
Well,
for the cheap seats here.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to start.
So when you are working with the distribution channel, right? When we're talking deal reg, we're talking distribution channel. You are wanting to make sure that you've got a relationship with the distributors that you're working with. And when you go out for pricing on things, that you are asking specifically for deal reg. Now, there's going to be times where a deal registration, which is at the end of the day, what can lock you into a price as a reseller or an MSP. There are going to be certain products that you can go to distribution with where you're told, well, there's no deal reg, it's standard pricing. You only need 1 or 2 widgets. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a certain volume. There's going to be others that can give you deal reg pricing, special pricing, if you will. If you're working, things like Fed, SLED. What is Fed and SLED? If you're working with the federal government, if you're working with state, local, or education, the distributors may give you 2%, right? Standard discount because that's the industry that you're working with. You want to make sure you ask for those things or you're leaving money on the table.
Okay, so let me get this before you move on, Trisco. I got a question for you. So deal registration is usually hardware or software.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, am I right?
Correct.
So you go to Dell and you register the deal, right? Or whomever, right? But just to give an example, you have servers, you're going through Dell and you can do it. So does everybody go into deal, call up Dell and say, hey, I'm doing this deal registration, and then your competitor can go down the street and get the same deal registration? Is that how the whole thing works? Or who cares?
Yeah. So typically, I worked for a hardware manufacturer prior to here, right? And our products were sold in some cases direct. And then in other times, they were going through the distribution channel, like an Ingram Micro or a Tech Data.
Sure.
So if I, as a reseller or an MSP, went to a distributor like Ingram Micro or Tech Data, and I brought this deal into them, and I was the first one that went in for a volume discount, they would come back to me as the hardware manufacturer, and I'd say, yes, I know that reseller is working that deal. Mm-hmm. We'll give them the deal reg, which means they've got the special pricing. Nobody else can get the special pricing. Now, just to be clear, it doesn't mean because you've got that deal registration approved to give you special pricing that you're automatically going to win the deal. Mm-hmm. Does it give you leverage? Yes. However, there could be multiple things on an RFQ. And if you've got another reseller willing to go and drop everything on the price side on something else to try to win that deal and they're picked, doesn't matter whether you had deal reg. So it's not a guarantee you're going to win it, but it certainly gives you leverage with best pricing.
And with extra points on it.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, to that point, I do remember back, Rob, when we were still in the industry, we would try, again, not necessarily me, it was more you, but I do remember a couple instances where we tried to get ahead of that, and specifically with Dell, trying to get that deal reg. I mean, we're talking 11, 12, 13 years ago at this point, so it's been a while. But I do remember losing out on some of those deal registrations. And specifically, I can remember a couple of times where it affected the outcome of if that company went with us or not.
Mhm.
We knew our competition quite well. We knew who got the deal reg and who didn't. And it's all pieces of the pie when you're trying to close business. Being the
Yeah.
first one it's not, again, just like Allison, you said, it's not going to ensure that you're going to win the deal,
Mhm.
but it's nice to be able to say that during the sales process.
Yeah.
Well, and look, we used to have plenty of value-added resellers that would come back to us and say, I had the deal reg. How did I not win this deal? Nobody can control what bucket someone, any buyer is going to drop into. They may decide to pay more because they've got a better relationship with somebody else. So there's no guarantees in any of this. So even though you're the lowest, it doesn't mean they're looking at lowest and best.
Yeah.
If it's a transactional relationship,
Yeah.
it's definitely percent profit based. But to your point, that's one of the reasons why you build up your relationship with your vendors and with your clients. Like
Absolutely.
I tell my account managers, you have to treat your vendors like they're a client as well. You've got to call them up. You got to have pre-scheduled calls. You've got to build that relationship, so you can, grease the wheels a little bit if you have to.
Mhm.
Well, and it's knowing your competition, right? It all dials into that. Like we have plenty of people that we have worked with that they may know their competition by name, but do they really
Mhm.
know if they're the ones that might be getting that same RFQ? And if they have a better relationship with that person, are you up against someone that might have a direct relationship with someone that they're getting product from,
Yeah.
right? You could go through the distribution channel and get a deal registration or special pricing. But if somebody else over here has a direct relationship with that manufacturer, because there are
Mhm.
cases that people say we are a channel company, but then they also do special pricing direct. You don't know what you're up against all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's bring it back to how the account manager can make money doing this.
Mhm.
Here's one of the things that I always encourage people to do. And Trisco, you did this for many years, so help me out here. The account manager is the one who controls the relationship with the vendor,
Mhm.
right? The account manager should be building up that relationship with the vendor and should have a complete understanding of all the rules that are related to deal reg. And as soon as you have an appointment with a prospect and they say there's going to be a project and that project is anywhere even close to the minimums, you register the deal
Mhm.
and inflate the number a little bit, right? So you get the deal reg. So
Mhm.
I tell everybody, always register the deal, inflate the number a little bit if you have to. If you're unsure, then you get the deal reg. Then you can kind of whittle it down or whittle it, whatever you're going to have to do. But boxing other people out is just as important as
Mhm.
making sure that you get the deal reg.
Absolutely, because when you're talking, especially from a hardware or software perspective, right? You're talking servers, right? You mentioned servers before. You don't know if you've sniffed out that there could be some add-on project, you want to make sure even if that's 6 months out that those numbers are added in, to your point, inflated so that you're covered. You don't want to lose out just because you said 2 and they said no deal reg.
Yeah.
Knowing that it could be 30 and someone else said 50 and they got it.
Yeah.
So that's 100% correct.
So is it fair to assume, and the answer could be both, but would you say this is more important on the account management side or when you're trying to get the sales side, like for the initial sale? Yeah, often, and the reason I ask that, often MSPs, when they're trying to bring on clients, there tends to be a large project attached to it in some way,
Mhm.
shape, or form. Would you say it's more of an account management, uh, uh, I guess, advantage or a new business advantage, or again, could be both?
It could be, it could be both. I think it just depends on where in the conversation it lands.
I agree, but I think, in my opinion, it's the account manager who controls the deal reg. You have to have one person or one team controlling the deal reg because they're building
Mhm.
up the relationship with the vendor. So
Correct.
if you have a new logo guy out there, don't ask him to go and try and
Mhm.
get the deal reg, because he or she'll just will take hours
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to figure out what it is. When I mean, that's how we did it, Tim.
Yeah.
We had one guy, and that person was supposed to, immediately, like, even if we smelled the potential of a deal, we
Yeah.
registered that deal.
So the importance is less about if it's an account manager or if it's trying to bring on that new client for the first time. It's
Mhm.
more around just making sure you've got somebody dedicated to get those deal registrations in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Oh
Look,
yeah.
I handled a lot of the deal regs that came through for the manufacturer that I worked at, and I had resellers calling me all the time. Hey, Allison, I'm working on this deal. Hey, Tommy, how's it going? He would tell me what he was working on. I'd qualify it and send it off to distribution so that when they went in for pricing, it was already set. And I set
Mhm.
the margin in that case, right? I
Mhm.
set what we were willing to do for that product and at that particular price level.
Mhm.
If I had a reseller that called me that I had never heard of before and I knew right well that they were not really in their spec and they just kind of sniffed out an RFQ that was out there, I'm not leaning toward them to give them a deal reg. You try to give it to the person that's doing the work,
Yeah.
right?
Makes sense.
Um,
Makes sense.
yeah, that can tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Be part of the spec-in process.
Yeah. Okay.
That's interesting. So, there's a couple of messages here that I think I'm hearing. Number one, speed is key.
Hmm.
Relationship is key.
Yeah.
Those are the two most important pieces with your vendor. So the account manager has to start working on the relationships with all the people that they could register deals for. I got another question for you, Trisco. Do you like, have favorite vendors and you always go back to those no matter what, or did you try and just, like, go direct? Like, what was the best move for you, or
Mm.
for an MSP sales rep, an account manager? Should they just be trying to get relationships built with every single person, or should they go through one house? Like, how do they do that?
They should have a couple different ones because you've got what you're going to run into too is especially if you're talking about hardware that they're trying to get pricing on.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What warehouse might have stock, what warehouse might not, how soon do they need, you
Yeah.
want to have a couple different relationships built up and then work the pricing that way.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Well,
guys, you have any other questions, Tim?
no, I think although on the shorter side, I think we had a lot of really good information out of this podcast. I mean, look, again, it's something that's been going on for a long time. We have seen, I would say, here at OSR, we've seen a lot of our clients dabble in this. We have some recently who are really going all in, and I would just, as an MSP out there, whether you've got a sales team or not, find somebody within your organization that can do your deal reg.
Yeah.
It's going to help you. It's going to give you an advantage during the sales cycle, whether it's bringing on a new client or trying to strengthen a relationship with a current client.
And so, and I would, make sure people understand a couple of things about this as we're, summarizing. Only one person gets the deal reg, right? So one company gets it. So speed is the key.
Mhm.
And if you're not the fastest, you better have the best relationship with the vendor. So you've got to, like, treat them just like a customer, have QBRs with them, make sure that you're building up a value-based relationship. And then the third thing about this is, even if you're unsure, register the deal.
Mhm.
Even if you don't have all the information, register the deal, because it blocks other people out and then it intimidates them. Then they have to do kind of crazy stuff on their side. Your competitors have to do crazy stuff, and then they don't get as much margin on the deal because they know you have the deal
Yeah.
registration. So then they have to go even lower. So it's a good practice, for one, for helping you with your margin and boxing out your competitor as well.
Yeah.
So it's a two-pronged attack there.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this was a good one. It's our first one in the books.
Yeah.
And it is now
Oh.
done. And for anybody who still happens to be listening to this podcast right now, we will have this up on LinkedIn and up on our osrmanage.com website as well, so you can get it in there and on Spotify and all the the podcast forums as well. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks.